David Goodman Reality and Truth Show. My name is Vanita Lambert, and I have the honor of hosting this show every single week. And I love bringing on very special guests to share information with the greater Bridgeport and beyond, because this is on YouTube, with very important information. And as you know, today is, this month is Black History Month, it's February. So we're gonna kick things off with Mr. Jeffrey Fletcher, who's the Executive Director of the Ruby and Calvin Fletcher African American History Museum. A must-hear story. So please share this with all of your family and friends. And we also have Miss Sylvia Woolfolk Martin. She is a registered nurse. She is also on the board of directors of the African American History Museum. And she's an NCNW and let's see what else, Southern Connecticut Black Chamber of Commerce and Juneteenth Community Service. And so thank you, Sylvia, for being here. Thank you, Mr. Fletcher, for coming in. And so without any further ado, since this is limited, we only have like 28 minutes, we're going to start off with Mr. Fletcher. Just please take us through a walk through your legacy, your family legacy, I'm going to call it.
Okay. Thank you, Vanita.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sylvia, for having me here today. Yes, this is the I call it the kickoff of Black History Month. I am Jeffrey Fletcher, the Executive Director and the President of the African American Collections Incorporated. We're located at 952 East Broadway, here in Stratford, Connecticut. The motivation, and how do I say this all in a compartmentalized setting here, but I'm going to try to do the best I can to get us through this in the next 28 minutes. So the museum is named after my mom and dad, Ruby and Calvin. Both were children who lived in the South during the 1930s and 40s until they migrated during the Great Black Migration in the 40s and 50s to Connecticut. They ended up landing in a place called Colchester, Connecticut, which is southeastern Connecticut, up by New London and Norwich. And the community that my mom arrived in from South Carolina was Colchester, and it's a town that was inhabited by a large percentage of Russian Orthodox Jews, in which she ended up being taken in by them and educated, as well as being taught about their culture, their religion, their spirituality, as well as maintaining her own Baptist Southern religion. The one thing I say as we were growing up in my household with my mom and dad, that we embraced Judaism as well as the Baptist church religion as well. So I tell folks that we had the best of both worlds. I speak of my mom, Ruby, a whole lot of this because she was the primary motivator and the drive for where we are today. As a child growing up in Camden, South Carolina, she collected bric-a-brac, little knick-knack things with monies that she was afforded while living on a sharecropper's farm with her 7 brothers and sisters and my grandparents. And if folks ever come across the logo of the museum, you'll see a shack and you'll see a tree. Our logo represents the humble beginnings of my mom living in Camden, South Carolina, in this small sharecropper's farm home. The tree represents the final resting place where my mom and dad are in Colchester, Connecticut, which represents the elm tree of Connecticut. So we have the symbolic features of the beginning and the end.
Okay.
So this collection is very important to me. I did not know where I was going to be taking it once I inherited it. So we're happy to have it in the museum where it is now, so that we can educate everyone about what this history means, especially as we sit here today in the month of February celebrating Black History Month.
Okay. Yeah, so the history of it, I think I've heard some of the stories, and it's the stories behind everything that makes it so important, make it so relevant. And like I said once before, once I've gone to your museum and listened to you, you know, do a few presentations, and I recommend while I'm on this, that, if you're anywhere in Connecticut, come and stop by 952 Broadway?
East Broadway.
East Broadway Street, where the museum is. It is a must-see. You have to come by and see it to get the full understanding of his mother's vision, her drive, her inspiration, and just her talent to come from a sharecropper. And when you're on sharecropping, you have to work and go to school, limited time. You only have so much education. And so for her to be smart, intelligent, experienced beyond her years to even set something like this up in place, this is huge. This is extraordinary to start something like this as almost a young girl, 20s, when your mom started this thing, started collecting, and to have it become not only your family legacy, but it's a school, because you're teaching children, how to, about the world, the different cultures, how, you may be treated or perceived or what have you. It is so much more than a museum, is what I'm trying to say. Right. Okay? To so many more people, it is a must-see. And I just want to thank her for giving you this collection to carry on, because it was the first museum I ever went to, African American museum, that I ever went to. And I wasn't prepared for what I was going to see. So when you come, you're going to see things you probably have never seen before.
Yeah, so to piggyback off of that,
yeah.
I got to be honest, I don't think she would have realized where her collection was going. So to be fair, what I've done was I wish she was alive. I wish my dad was alive so that they can see this. But again, there was no real planning behind this except for the fact that she knew why she wanted to do this collection. And as I mentioned in other conversations that I've had in the museum as well as in presentations around the state, she used this collection to educate not only us, as you mentioned, but folks across the spectrum of different cultures, races, and ethnicities. But the collection primarily was used to educate her children on how perception of African Americans was viewed by folks that did not look like me, because we grew up in a community that was inhabited by 90% of white folks. And we were one of maybe 6 African American families in that community. Okay. So we had to understand the nuances, the narratives, the silent dog whistles, perception of how we would be looked at in those environments, in those spaces. And so a lot of these objects that we see in the museum today, I often talk about putting a face on why these objects were so important to my mother, and also showing her children and educating her children of the perception of how we are viewed in some circles as clowns, buffoons, idiots, and dehumanizing figures, right? So that was, I think, she would be really happy today if she knew, and I'm sure she does know, because I always often feel her spirit, right? My dad's spirit.
You are her, believe me. I feel it.
And so she was a very transparent woman, a very open, honest woman. There was no gray area. It was either black or white, or it was right or wrong, no maybe, right? And that's the type of person she was. But she made it clear that she championed not only black folks, but everybody in the downtrodden.
Yeah. Sylvia and I, we were just talking about how, I'm a senior, I'm 65. When I was growing up, I wasn't taught things like that. It was like a closed culture. It was like things you didn't say out loud, but you knew. And so that's why, I commend her for even going back further. You said the 30s or 40s or whatever. For her to even get the idea to teach, to collect these things, to teach our children, because it just wasn't something that African American, Black people thought of. And, you know, like I grew up in an all Black, mostly, you know, some Hispanics, but then when we went to school, everyone, all of the teachers, the principals, they were all white. And so, and when they treated us differently, we just felt bad. You know, we didn't know why. You were kids. So that's why I commend your mom for this legacy. And your dad, because, you know, he had a driver. They usually come along when we say go.
Yeah. And I often say that too. I mean, when I do not pay respect to my dad, because he was, as you just mentioned, not only the driver, but I call him her co-pilot, right? Because in every African American family, there's always a strong woman that's there. My mom was that woman. And my mom said she saw something in the newspaper where it said there's a tag sale or there was an auction or something of that nature. She would say, Calvin, we got to go. And this comes from my dad's testimony after her passing. He would say, your mama asked me to go, so I go. And sometimes he'd sit in the car, and sometimes he would join her. But there was one story that he did tell real quickly about his being a driver.
Okay.
So he took her to a grocery store within the community, and this was back in the 70s.
Okay.
And so this is how my mother was, and so they came out and they saw these flyers, handbills that were in the windshield wiper. So she pulls it out and she reads it, and it was a KKK rally meeting in Durham, Connecticut, Middlefield. And my mom looked at that, and my dad, you know, he didn't say anything other than kind of like, okay, we got this, and that's it. I never knew about this, but it was said at her eulogy at her funeral by a cousin who she shared this information with. And what happened was my mom had my dad take her to this Ku Klux Klan rally in Middlefield.
Wow.
And they went, and they got as far as probably maybe 1,000 yards away from where they were actually assembling. And finally somebody came up, knocked on the window, and told my mom on her side that they're not supposed to be there. And my mom said, as my cousin reiterated during the eulogy, because my mom told her the story, that the gentleman was very nice. He wasn't throwing any derogatory or slanderous words at her. Said, ma'am, you just got to go. You can't be here. My dad didn't haste. He backed up as quick as he could and got out of there.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this until that moment when I heard this, and I turned to my dad because he was alive at that point, and I said, Daddy, did this happen? He said, yeah, but your mama told me not to tell you, because at that time I was not in law enforcement, but I was playing basketball and just finishing starting college and things. And so I heard that story, and that's how defiant, but that's how direct my mom was, because she was always inquisitive about these types of things, and she had to see it firsthand, almost to the point of possibly being assaulted and possibly anything else
Or a
happen.
lot worse.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I had to share that. That's the foundation of who my mom was. Ruby.
Wow. Oh, oh my goodness, I don't know what to say about that. All I know is that I would have went in the opposite direction, out of fear for my life, because of, you know, movies, things I saw on TV. And we're talking about the 70s. We're not talking about, you know, the 30s. And things like that were still happening. And there was, you know, nothing done about it in most cases.
Yeah, she was
very, very curious.
Yeah, she was, and you know, as I mentioned, she was often labeled a troublemaker. But as I mentioned in other settings, today we learn as a troublemaker being told they're good trouble. Good trouble, as the late John Lewis had said. You know, there is no such thing as bad trouble. It's good trouble, especially if you are changing the life and the momentum of something that is not right. And so that's what who my mom was. And I often say that she was years ahead of
Way.
of what we're doing today.
Way ahead. Way ahead. And I bet, had it not been, under those circumstances, under the KKK meeting, I bet your mom could have changed some lives. Because some people, they grow up and they're taught certain ways, and you have tunnel vision, and that's what you do. But then until you meet someone that can show you another way, to show you that, I'm a human being too. If you cut me, my blood is going to be red just like yours. And you can teach people how to teach you. And from what I've heard about your mom, she was loved by so many different cultures, so many different people, Black, white, Jewish, Spanish, old, young, everything. So she probably could have made a difference, and I think she thought she could have made a difference.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, in the back seat of your mom and your dad, God was in the back seat. Going to a KKK meeting in the 70s, he had to be.
And she, and again, I champion and I revel at the things that she went through and her life, right? And she always used to say she wanted better for us. And she always wanted us not to have to go through what she went through as a child, being denied education, right? And also watching her father being incarcerated because he defied the white landowner who owned the sharecropping house that she was not going to work in the fields. And then being actually beat by my grandfather because she made it bad on him, to where they took him away for several days until the message got back to the family that she needed to be in the fields working. And then listening to her talk about the only time you saw blackbirds, and when a child or somebody was missing, you'd see blackbirds flying around trees because there would be somebody that had their lives were taken by vigilantes. So what she learned, she brought it to us, right? And to that, she looked at this violence, these traumas that she's seen firsthand. Folks would say, well, how come she didn't teach you and your brother and your sisters hatred and racism and discrimination?
Right.
That just wasn't who she was molded by or what she was molded by. So a lot of times she would tell us to look at things with an open mind, but judge people individual, not as a group. And so as I sit here today, I don't say everybody in the white race or the Latino race or the Asian race or so
black
forth.
race.
Black race. I don't hold everybody accountable. But one thing she always did say to us, you hold that individual accountable and make sure that what you're trying to speak to he or she is clear, that it's not the right thing to do. But my mom was someone who didn't harbor racism and didn't bring those things that she saw and transferred onto us. And folks would have thought that. And I get that question sometimes, with all the atrocities that your mom has experienced and seen, was any of that influenced by who we are today in our family? And I say no. I mean, again, she was ahead of her time.
Yeah, she definitely was. And those feelings, the heat, the jealousy, and all that, they will eat you from the inside out.
That's right.
And that's not who she was. If she was that person, she wouldn't have been able to raise you to be the way you are.
Yeah.
And she was a true Christian as far as I could see. She loved God and she loved others, and that was it.
I'll tell you something.
All others.
She's coming through you right now.
Woo! I feel it. I got goosebumps.
Because you just mentioned something. She and I used to bang heads because I was back in my defiant days of college, youth, and I wasn't as spiritual as she was.
I got one of them. Go ahead.
And every time something bad would happen to me, and I'd speak to her because she was my confidant. My dad was that guy that sat in the back, and he was just kind of like the guy who was going to kind of, if anything exploded, he would try to mediate it, right? But we would talk about religion. And when something bad happened to me and I talked to her, she would always say, just pray on it, right? She'd say, God will find a way for you to get through whatever hatred is in front of you. And I used to argue and say, look how God has done for you, right? And she used to look at me and she'd shake her head and she'd say, one day you're going to understand. One day you're going to understand.
Yeah.
And I truly believe it, but when you mentioned God, it was kind of like,
Here comes me.
here she comes, because that's who she
I thought
was.
I heard somebody tap me on my left shoulder.
No, she won't tap you. You'll have that fleeting thought that comes in, and then you'll say to yourself, "Oh my God, where did that come from?" And I often found that in a lot of scenarios leading up to opening the museum and getting it started, and now still negotiating with doing other things. I can't explain it. When I'm faced with an obstacle and a controversy, something happens within 8 to 12 hours, and it's better. And so, and I have a calmer head in order to deal with it. So I believe, yes, that God plays a lot, but I think my mom and dad are in the background playing too. They're orchestrating.
It wouldn't be possible without him. And you're crying. Oh.
No. It's my eye. I have an allergy or something where it links. I'm not crying, but I am a crybaby. I mean, I was close to it a few times. Yeah. So, God, I always say God's got the final say. And, pray when things are good and pray when things are bad. And, being alone a lot, I'm kind of a loner because, my job, I'm driving from house to house and by myself. I always talk to God. I have such a great relationship with them. And I just know He's there at all times. And like you said, you'll go through something bad and 8 hours later or whatever, it's better. He doesn't put you through anything you cannot handle.
That's right.
Right.
He's always there through her. You are living her dream, a dream that she hadn't realized or planned, but it was God's plan. He sees everything. He knew this was going to happen. He didn't know how he probably knew how or when. You didn't know how or when. She had no idea it was going to grow to this. Like you said before, and look at it.
Yeah, and one thing, this one of these statements I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. All of these objects that I have collected from her, as well as enhanced the collection, I refer to as junk, right?
I remember that the first time.
I told you that the first time we ever met. I told you that story, that it was junk.
Okay,
And so the thing is, and she'd always say things were valuable, right? But I never understood what that conversation meant or that comment meant. And I learned over the years as I started to get more involved in this collection and seeing the legacy behind it, it values more than the money.
Yeah.
And she wasn't talking about
It's
money.
priceless.
It is.
She was talking about education, preservation, and enlightening people. So now what comes into fold when folks ask me, well, how much is your collection worth? Or how much is that piece worth? I say it's not worth anything. It's worth education, preserving, and also enlightening a community that needs this. So she said a lot of things that were really, really strong.
Yeah.
And I can be here all day talking to you as I have told you before. But again, I know we have limited time.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure there are a few things that you have to add on to this as well.
Yeah, I just would like to, we have about 3 or 4 minutes left. And I would just like to thank you for sharing your story. And I would love for everyone to share this story with their families and learn from this and teach your stories. And so again, if you have an opportunity, come and visit the museum. You have the email address on the screen, you have the phone number on the screen. If you missed a show, we're on YouTube. You can always go there and check it out. So
I just want to say one more thing.
Yeah, you have the last 2 minutes. I'm done.
Because February is Black History Month, the shortest month in the year, it does not mean that you can only come to the museum February Black History Month. We are open 365 days of the year, and there are some holidays we're closed, but again, please come and visit us. And we are not a museum that will close the doors on anyone. And so we're open.
Yeah, and also a lot of people are the misconception that Black History Month is only for Black people. I just want to put it out there. Yes, it's for everyone. It is to teach everyone, and we want to learn about your culture. I think there's like a Hispanic month. Not sure what it is, March or Feb or October, one of those months. It's to just remind everybody that we're a nation of immigrants. It took all of us to build America, and we all take part in it, and we all have something important to share. So we need your support. We're not segregating. We are just uniting and celebrating, and we want every culture to come out and share with us, just like on the opening day.
And the last thing here too
Sure.
is that the museum is now building a relationship or trying to build a relationship within the Latino community, because we believe that Latino diaspora is as important, if not, but it's important in paralleling with the African American culture, because Africans were transferred to Caribbean,
Yep.
South and Central America. So our culture, our music, our food, and our dance
Everything.
are similar. So what we're doing is we are now building and incorporating the Latino diaspora by having QR codes that you can activate on your phone for those Latino people that are challenged with Spanish to understand what these pieces and exhibits are about. So we are broadening our information and our communication where the museum is concerned.
Okay, and also it's privately funded. It is not funded by the government.
No.
So we don't have to go by certain rules. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so, and I do believe there's a website with a donate button.
Yes.
We do take contributions, maybe that email address or phone number, or just,
The email,
Google it.
the email
Tell
address.
us.
When you go on the email address, you will see how you can go about contributing or supporting the museum, because we have some challenges ahead. As we know, this present administration is trying to carve out and do cultural identity
Yes.
information. So we are not affected by what this administration is doing, although we do believe at some point in time we will be in the crosshairs to try to figure out how to keep us from telling our story and our message of this history.
Okay, and that's very well said. Thank you guys both so much for coming on. Please share this information. This is the David Goodman Reality and Truth Show, and we're on your side.
Thank you.